Hi, my name is Ross Waterston, the creator and founder of Geordie Consulting and Geordie Intelligence. Last week, we looked at time intelligence, didn't we? Where we start to put in specific time intelligence measures to further augment what we've done. Within those time intelligence measures, what we often did was reference a single basic measure. So what we're going to do this week is actually look at how we can extend that so that when my manager comes to me and says, "Oh, well done, you've given us a nice sales measure. What about quantity sold or quantity shipped?" I'm not having to recreate and rewrite everything constantly. And then we're also going to look at a couple of other options that we've now got within Power BI. A couple of recent changes that are massively improving things and are going to make your life much easier while also expanding what you can do and what the user customization options are within your reporting content. But first, the boring bit. Geordie Intelligence is a YouTube channel. YouTube relies on interactions, really. So if you like the channel, if you subscribe to the channel, if you leave comments on our videos, all of those help the algorithm see that this is an active channel and it's providing valuable content, which I'd like to believe we do. If you agree, drop a comment down below. I dare you. So here we are, where we left off last week. Okay, I've already saved this as week 7 file. We'll upload it to GitHub when the video goes live. What we've done, if you remember, if we zoom in here, is underneath our sales, we've got our sales amount measures here now. And we've added a month to date, using the calculate, and we've done the rest, week to date, all those. So we've got time intelligence within there, but it's all dependent on me remembering that it's there. And if I need to do another set of measures, I have to go and write a whole nother set of measures. But that's really inefficient, isn't it? And we don't like inefficiency in Power BI. We want to be more efficient about what we do. So fortunately, there's an option available for that. In order to do it, and to set this up, you have to have Tabular Editor installed. Okay? So we're going to use Tabular Editor 2.0, but Tabular Editor 3 is available. The reason why we're using 2 is because it's free. I'll be straight up front about that. I've ummed and ahed in this channel about whether we should include or use paid plugins or options for it. And I've decided we won't in this channel. That does rule us out from some things that I'd actually really like to use. But I think the problem is when you start to get into the licensing model for that alongside Power BI, it becomes challenging. And it's a very difficult conversation to have with senior leadership teams when you say, well, we've got to get this much budget for Power BI, this much for Fabric, this much for whatever it is. And then, oh, but that pretty picture in the corner, that's going to be an extra. And it's the extra, even if it's just an extra $1, that's still, like a significant percentage increase because those will be per user licenses. Tabular Editor 3.0, because it's a developer side tool, is probably fine from that front. It might well be that it's realistically, it does stack up that you could license it for your developers quite easily. But we're not going to use it as long as we can get what we need from 2. That's my view, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Anyway, that said, let's get started. Once you've installed Tabular Editor, it'll appear under your external tools. So if you click on Tabular Editor, it will open on a different screen, no doubt. Yep, it has, and I will drag it onto the correct screen. There we go. Okay. And what we can see here is it is connected up to a model, and it's this model that we're in at the moment. So it automatically loads, connected. If you want to just open it, that's fine. You open it and then you go and tell it to open, or you can connect to what you need. It's much easier though, just open it from Power BI desktop would be my advice. Okay, so I'm going to make it full screen. Come over here. So what we're looking at is under tables, okay, we've got a full list of all the tables that we have within our model. Okay? So what we're going to do is if we right click on here, we can see we can create a new, and what we want to do is create a new calculation group. So calculation groups are what we're going to use. And what that does is you provide a measure to a calculation group, and it will then apply all the calculation items or options to it. So you can then see everything that comes out. So time intelligence is an ideal option for this. So if we click on a new calculation group, we're going to call this time intelligence. Okay. The calculation group has a name. So when you drag it in, you're obviously picking it as a table for that. But then the name, which is what will appear somewhere else, is kind of what you want to think about. So at the moment, name is what it's got. And I'll be honest, name's a bit of a sucky name, isn't it? So if we double click on it or right click on it, no. Which is why I really should have kept it small. Let me change this. Let's make this small again. Bring that over here. There we go. Right, that's better, isn't it? Right. So we're going to click on name. Okay, and then we can see name is here. So we're going to rename that to be time intelligence. Or let's say intelligence functions. I'll just call it that. Okay, nothing. So it's got a clear name. Okay. As you can see, I've not really got to the point where I'm comfortable with what that right name should be for any of these. And then what we say is we go back to the calculation items. We can right click and add a new calculation item. And this one is going to be current. Okay. Now this is a best practice thing. Whenever you do whenever you do calculation groups, you should have a baseline, a current, a default, whatever you're going to call it. And that's just going to be, well, what was the raw measure that you fed into this function going to return? Okay, so it's kind of, it makes sense to have a current one. Now the secret sauce that goes in is because we're assigning a measure into it that it then is going to process, we need to tell it, use this measure. And so that measure is referenced within DAX statements within your calculation item. And that measure is referenced using this. Oh, selected measure. Okay, open brackets, close brackets. Okay, so it's a function. So it needs open brackets, close brackets, but it doesn't need any parameters, so it can be blank. Kind of what that means. So we've got selected measure there. So we're going to click OK. And you can see this little icon becomes a question mark. So, okay, which means it's waiting to be pushed into the main model. It's not being pushed in the model yet. So it's sitting in a staging area, as it were, within Tabular Editor. So we'll go through and we'll do some more. So we're going to create a new calculation item. Okay, month to date. Okay, and we're going to do this a different way because we used calculate for the last one. So calculate the measure name, comma, date, month to date. What we'll do is total month to date, total MTD, open brackets, selected measure, close brackets, comma, and then we need to put calendar date. Okay, so we need to tell it which date values to use for that. Okay, so we've now put in what our total month to date is. And Tabular Editor has format DAX option here. So if you're writing complex DAX, as Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari will say, unless it's been formatted, it's not DAX. So be sure to click your format DAX option. Okay, unfortunately, looks like I've done quite a good job. I think it added a space or removed one somewhere there. Okay, win-win for me. Click the little tick for that. Okay, new calculation item, QTD. Okay, and then we're going to call this total QTD, open brackets, selected measure, open brackets, close brackets, comma, calendar date. Okay, close brackets. Click the little format DAX. I missed a space. Accept those changes. Let's do the next one. Okay, YTD. And this is going to be total YTD, open brackets, selected measure, oh, comma, calendar, date. Okay. And hit the little squiddy thing. What have I missed? Seems happy. Okay. So we've got 3 of these plus our default one now, haven't we? Okay. So we can kind of see we've got something that allows us to see where we would, what this is going to serve up for us. And we could keep going and add as many of these as you want. You could come back in later as well and add more. So there's no, oh, I've done this movie. Stuck. Okay. So we've got that. So we're going to hit save here, which is going to, as you see, save changes to the connected database. Okay. So we're going to click that. Save. Okay. Nothing's gone wrong, so it's quite happy. So if one of these had mistyped something, you would get a little exclamation mark in where the question mark had been. Everything's fine, it's accepted them. If we come through to our file, we see one or more calculation groups needs to be manually refreshed. So over on the right-hand side of your page, you will have a little refresh now button. So I will click refresh now. Okay, and that's now refreshed the schema file, which is why it's so quick. It's only a schema update that needs to happen. So what we can do here is if we zoom out of it, I'm just trying to think with this. Let's move this way, okay? And now what we see is on the right-hand side, we've got this time intelligence, and we've got this time intelligence functions, which is why I was saying, well, I don't know what to put this, so how would you call that? But you can see what the name implies. So what we've got now is let's click this, time intelligence functions. Let's click calendar, and let's bring in month, year. Okay. Oh, it's not happy about that, is it? What's it? Oh, it's because it does, yeah. And then we're going to pick a value. So let's pick sales amount. Okay. And all of a sudden, it makes sense. It works. Let's make that into a matrix because that's easier. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch these around. Okay. Right. So what we've now got is this. So we can see 14. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? That's the same as that. Although one goes down to the cent amount, that's stuck at the dollar, which is fine. Okay. And we've got everything. So we've got the month to date where we can see follow it month to month to month. We've got the quarter to date, which is then adding those up each quarter and then resetting. Okay. These aren't even dates, are they? These are, what's this ordered by? There we go. Ordered properly now. Okay. And we've got the year to date. Okay, where it's going to go all the way up through the years. So we've got those quickly and easily. And then because we've got this in such a way now, if I came through and I said, well, what I need is the shipped amount or the shipped information, I can come through and I can say, well, let's just bring in quantity shipped. And I can even drop it on the chart and it'll show me it. Let's remove the sales, but we can see suddenly it's there. And each of those measures that we've written is now applied against that new measure. So the benefit that you get from this is as we start to talk about let's bring more citizen developers on, they might learn how to write simple DAX statements. They don't need to learn how to do all the complex stuff, okay? Because we could do things like you could have a mathematical functions one where it's going to apply things like standard deviations or do stuff, whatever it is you want to do, you can place all these in and it will work for you. And all they need to do is just place it on. Okay, so there's kind of the world is your oyster with that. You just need to build those calculation groups for them. And then they just pick the measure and you drop that in on top of it and it augments what you've got. Okay? So we've got our calculation group built, but we have to kind of pick, don't we, what we want to go in with it. So I've just removed the other chart that we had. Okay, what about if we do something that's going to allow us to pick what we want to be here? So what that is that's actually called a field parameter. So what you've got now under the modeling, you've got new parameters and you've got new parameters fields. Okay, there's a lot you can do with field parameters. I would definitely say experiment with them a lot. because you can bring in different axes, you can bring in different measures, and that's what we're going to do today, okay? But it's worth experimenting and seeing and understanding that whatever it is I suggest, you might well have a different use case that's better or anything like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in sales amount, we're going to bring in quantity sold, and we're going to bring in quantity shipped. And I'm going to untick this add slicer to page. You can add slicer to page by default. I will add the slicer to the page manually, but I wanted you to see the steps to do that, right? Which is why I'm unticking it, okay? But yeah, it's well worth leaving it ticked because a lot of the time, the fact you're doing it means you need it, but we'll do that, okay? So we've got it in here. See, it appears at the bottom. I didn't rename it, did I? Idiot Ross. What we can do is we can zoom in here now, so you can see the code. This is the code that goes on for it. Now, there is a peculiarity in Power BI that if you just go and say create a new table and try to key this in, it will not create a field parameter. That might be getting fixed at some point. Certainly, as far as I know, it still hasn't been fixed. Probably has secretly and no one's told me. But once it's in, you can change stuff. So we can say, put an underscore in, select a measure. Okay, select our measure. There we go. All right, I'll put some underscores in so we don't have spaces and all that kind of thing. What we have is we've got a label in here. So we've got the label. This name of function is returning a measure that will be used with that label. So in the slicer, it will appear as sales amount. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's change this to be, I'm going to change that. Let's change all of them so they all, so instead of a total, they also show the total, yeah? Okay. Right, that symbol that I'm really starting to hate that I picked. So we've got that now. We can see the name of the measure that's going to be used, and we have then a number. So that's the order that they're going to appear in the slicer. Okay. So we click away from there, and let's zoom back out again, and we can see it's brought it right to the top. Within here, we can see we have parameter. Okay, and again, we could choose to rename that. Selection. I should have renamed all these when I was making it, but yeah, you can see, you can double click, rename, do stuff. Can you? Yeah, I think you can. Okay, so we'll drag this over onto our page, and it comes through as a table, of course it does. Drop down, and we're going to pick slicer. Right, and we've now got, here we go. Right, and we can see all three are selected. What I want to do is I want to make it so you can only pick one. So what I'm going to do is go on the right-hand side, click on here for the format, and we'll zoom in, and then under slicer settings, we can see we've got vertical list. We want selection, single select. Okay? And then we can zoom out again, and we can now see we've got radio buttons for it. But so far, nothing's happening. Big whoop, Ross, you don't know what you're doing, do you? And that's because what I need to do is come here, and instead of total value or total quantity, I'm going to click there, expand the field well. Underneath select a measure, I'm going to pick selection. And suddenly, this is now showing quantity sold. This is now showing the quantity sold. This is showing the sales amount that we made, quantity sold, quantity shipped. In theory, if we had the ability to pick multiples, I can pick multiples, okay? It will work with multiples. But this is a really nice tool that will enable you to do different things within your data sets. You can, and this is quite a common one, is you may want to display these things. You need to do these. We're not going to have a deep dive into field parameters today, but there's an awful lot more that you can do with them. For a client recently, one of the things we did was we ended up with what they had and the way they wanted to work. We couldn't rely on calculation groups for everything that they needed. In terms of the amount of measures they needed, we ended up writing nearly 1,500 for them for everything. They were all variants on the main thing, and it was to do with the mix between their Power BI environment and Excel estate that they still had, because you can connect with connected Excel stuff and things like that. But the field parameters were a big hit And it took a long time, but to try and work out a slicer to allow you to get to 1,500 endpoints meant we had to put in hierarchies so they would drill down to the particular area they wanted and then pick the measure. But it meant you had a very easy way of starting to structure report packs. Rather than having to go and search for things, you could just drop that on and pick from the slicer, and it worked. Okay, so there's a lot in here to unpack about what you can do with field parameters. Okay, it's well worth taking the time to learn them. So, should we do the last bit of this? Okay, and I'm conscious we've kind of thrown lots at you, kind of throwing like calculation groups, field parameters, and now we're going to throw this Tabular Model Definition Language, TMDL, piece at you. Okay? TMDL is one of those new areas that's kind of coming through into Power BI now. I mean, it's partly driven by Fabric. It's about allowing you to move away from using the Power BI desktop tool constantly and do development really in like a more of a shell-based kind of script editor. But what we've got is we've got this TMDL editor now within the Power BI desktop environment. You need to enable it through the preview features piece. You need to turn it on. But once it's on, you've got a lot that you can do. So if we look at the time intelligence field parameter that we not field calculation group, sorry, that we wrote, create a new one of these. All you need to do is drag things onto here. Okay, so we drag it in, and you can see here is the TMDL that goes into producing that, and we can see we've got everything in it. Okay, now there is an order to these. Okay, so the order that these appear in is the order that these will appear in the columns that are created, or in the field lists, the calculation items. So the order is important. So if you are going to do this or edit these, you can shuffle things around just by moving them up or down. But what I wanted to show you was one of the options we got. So we only put in 4, didn't we? Which is, you want more than that, don't you? So if I close script 3, okay, I'm going to delete that script. I'm going to right-click on time intelligence, and I'm going to delete that as well. Okay, so delete from model. Do you want to delete time intelligence? Yeah, I do. Okay. And then I'm going to do a Blue Peter thing. And I'm going to go create new. And I'm going to, oh, I've just written that really quickly, haven't I? My amazing tippy-typy fingers. Okay. Now what we've got at the top here is we've got this ability to apply. So we're just going to apply this to our model. It's going to hit applying. It's going to say one or more calculation groups needs to be refreshed, which of course we get that. Okay. So we'll scroll right over to there, which we know. So we're going to hit refresh. We're going to come out of here. And what we now see is we've got time intelligence, and you see we've got ordinal time intel, which is our key piece that we wanted. Okay. What's ordinal? That's hidden. Yeah. So if we go over to here, we'll see this measure is now broken because time intelligence doesn't exist, as it were. But if we change this and we say, actually, what we want is this, and we'll remove that, suddenly you see we've got an awful lot more in here. So I brought in month to date, we brought last month, last quarter, last year, month over month, all those you can write and do. And there's nothing wrong with putting more in there. And what I've done for the sake of this is I've added the TMDL for this into our GitHub. And I'm also going to be updating the our calendar to have a TMDL calendar, because you can use the TMDL to bring in the Power Query side of the calendar as well. So it will have everything, but it will then also have all the custom sorts that we need so that your calendar works properly without you having to do anything else. And it should also be flagged as the calendar table, which is just kind of everything you want. So we're already seeing that TMDL is going to bring an awful lot of benefit from us. But from this side, can you imagine next time I do time intelligence with the next model, all I have to do is go to the TMDL file or models button, paste it in as a new script. It'll automatically come through. There's no more having to go into Tabular Editor and edit and create these calculation items each and every time, because there's no quick way of doing it because everything has to be done at each one. You could have a list of them, and I've done it in the past where you go, okay, really time consuming. This is great. So what do you reckon then? Okay, now having everything come together in this way is different, okay? Because now we've got the ability to use calculation items, which will then save us from having to write measure after measure after measure after measure, but also that allow novice developers to actually get quite sophisticated analysis done using those calculation group measure sets that you've got. Because as well of having TMDL, it means that we can do mathematical function sets. We can do all sorts of other sets of how would you want to augment your calculation? Kind of, I mean, I'm saying mathematical sets, potentially you would, I don't know. You know, you tell me, what would you like? Would we do an average? Would we do a mean? Would we do not an average or a mean? They're the same thing, Ross. Like an average or a standard deviation or something like that. And I'm saying, well, how is that the right way to do it? It depends on how you use these. There's all sorts of ways that you can do it, but it's just a case of saying, right, there's a lot more that can be done now using things like TMDL, using field parameters to then allow people to pick which measure they want to use, and then which measure is going to get applied against the calculation group. So suddenly you've got this ability to really explore. What we didn't do was use a slicer to select which calculation items we want to use, which of course you can do. So put the calculation items on a slicer, and then you can say, well, I want these ones, I want it against this. Here's your resulting table or your resulting chart. You could set up sets of measures, so you can do kind of things like that. So you can actually build up a hierarchy of all sorts of, yeah, anyway, right, we can spend so much time on this. The world really is your oyster in terms of setting these up as your core line of business reports, because using that could save you from having to do an extra 2 or 3 or 4 report packs based on, well, what was last month, what was last year, what was last this, what's the month over month, what's the year over year. If you've got those, just pick, I can have one report that just does everything and is easy enough for people to use. And they just go, so I go to the parameters tab and I update that, and then here's everything, or it's available on the page. It makes life easier for people. Right? So I'm all about that. And that's really one of the important things you want to make for your consumers, is make it really easy to get the insights out of Power BI that they need to take that next step and act against the data. Act with the data, in line with the data. Yeah, I know what I'm saying. If you like what you've seen, there's a link down below to request a meeting with Geordie Consulting. They work with businesses of all sizes to actually understand not just what they do now with their data analytics projects, where they want to get to, and then we work out that path between the two. And the plan is always to leverage as much of your existing resources as possible, so that you're not lumbered with high cost of ownership or high cost of transition. And you will also then see a much quicker ROI on any investment and spend that you put towards your Fabric or Power BI estate. Okay? For now, though, stay safe, take care, ta-da.